the big house has everybody's attention. If you are centered on one game this weekend, it is number 4 Texas on the road at number 9 Michigan, 11 a.m. It's Fox's big game kickoff, big noon kickoff. Texas 7.5-point favorites in Ann Arbor. Does that line seem a little high to you, or is this right at about what you expected given Michigan's struggles and Texas's offensive palooza in week 1?
It feels like a ton of points. I'll be honest. When I saw that line without really thinking about the matchup, it seemed like a ton of points. But really, when you think about what both of these teams put on the field last Saturday, it really doesn't seem like a ton of points, right? It seems about right if you're just judging it in the vacuum of last Saturday. I think when this line was first released back in the spring, it was like teetering between 1.5 to 2.5 for Texas. So a big jump, obviously, once we've seen these two teams on the field. But again, makes sense when you think about the games against Colorado State and Fresno State last week.
For me, when I look at the film from both of these games, and I've watched both games back in preparation for this, Texas has an air force out wide. In fact, one of their wide receivers said that we have 2 4x100 relay teams in this wide receiver room. I mean, Texas is speed upon speed at their skill positions. The offensive line, I think, might be the unit that I trust the most out of both sides of the football for either team. So when I kind of look at what my rubric says, which I wrote on our Substack, my rubric underwent a couple of tweaks this week after basically getting stonewalled on picks last week. It was not a great week for your boy. I had to look at where I think each team has the advantage and which team has their X factor that's going to shine through. And I'll be honest, Trey, it's really hard for me to think that Michigan has many advantages. I know you're really high on them muddying this game up. I'll turn it over to you in just a moment. But I tell you what, looking at what Texas can do offensively, and I texted you this earlier, they're going to make Michigan cover every square inch of that football field on Saturday morning. I don't know if Michigan has the ability to make Texas's defense do the exact same. And so if this is a rock fight, one of those teams has to break the rock fight through an explosive play or two, right? That's normally what we see. A chunk play ends up being the difference. If I had to pick one of those teams to break through with a chunk play, I'm taking the Longhorns.
Yeah, if it's a chunk play or if it's a big explosive play that decides this game, it's absolutely going to go in Texas's way. I think there's really not a lot you could do to push back against that argument. I think the path to victory for Michigan is much different than relying on chunk plays, though. I think the path to victory for Michigan is muddy it up, kind of take the air out of the football, trust your offensive line. I know the offensive line didn't look great against Fresno State at times last week, but just finding rhythm offensively, staying in that rhythm, staying ahead of the chains, and taking the air out of the football, keeping the ball out of Quinn Ewers' hands. And when Quinn does have the football in his hands, forcing him to make mistakes through the pass rush, through that really good secondary that Quinn's going to have to throw into. Because I know that he has a ton of great wide receivers. They looked amazing against Colorado State last week, but this is an elite Michigan secondary still. This is elite Michigan defense still that shut down a really respectable offense that Fresno State brought to Ann Arbor last week. So I'm not ready to throw out Michigan's chances completely out of the water. I think their path to victory is more narrow than Texas because Texas can rely on those big plays, maybe a busted coverage or two, but don't sleep on Quinn Ewers' ability to make a mistake that changes this game, especially facing a raucous road crowd and going up against a defense that led the team to a national championship last year and brings a lot of guys back from that unit.
You pointed out when we were talking about this game in preparation, Michigan's offensive woes seemed to come back to the fact that they didn't have one quarterback just steering the ship through the entire game, right? As far as using Warren and Alex Orji, from what you watched the Wolverines put out there against Fresno State, is there one quarterback that you prefer the offense behind? And is there any world in which Sharon Moore can run those two quarterbacks out there and succeed? Because man, they weren't able to do it against Fresno State. I'm hard pressed to believe that they're going to do it against the Longhorns.
It feels like it needs to be Davis Warren's team for the most part. He's the guy that they trust to actually throw the football,
Yeah.
right? Because Alex Orji attempted 2 passes the
Ugh.
whole game on Saturday night. So to me, I really didn't like that they didn't let uh, Warren get into a rhythm throughout that entire football game. Every other play, it seemed like Alex Orji was coming in to run the same zone read, the same handoff concept.
Mhm.
It didn't really do a lot for me. It looked like they were trying to experiment with a lot of different things offensively and not really letting Davis Warren get into a rhythm. And that's what he needs. He needs the reps. He needs that time to prepare. Once he started getting more of the reps towards the end of the game, the fourth quarter, he led a really nice drive, made a couple good throws to extend the drive. So he has some arm talent there. He has something to work with, but he just didn't really get into a rhythm. He didn't really build chemistry with his receivers. It's a whole new receiving core too that Michigan's throwing
Yeah.
out there. So I really didn't like that strategy from Sharon Moore and company. I'm really interested to see what it looks like this week. I think we're going to see Alex Orji only in very certain situations, right? It's 3rd and 3. We need to pick up a first down. We need to all get behind the line and just push forward. I
Student
think that's
body
a
left,
great
student body right.
Exactly. I think that's a great spot for Alex Orji. Maybe similar to how Notre Dame ran Riley Leonard last week down the stretch to make some plays and convert some first downs and keep the ball moving on offense. But I don't think we need to have a ton of the Alex Orji experience on the offensive side of the ball. It doesn't need to be every other play like it was at times against Fresno State.
Fair, fair enough. I'll let the Twitter sphere run with that one.
May have
Give
been
me your pick.
intentional.
Give me your pick here. We're on opposite ends of this coin. You've got Michigan plus 7.5. What do you ultimately see the difference being that keeps Michigan within that point scheme? And do you have the Wolverines winning outright?
Man, I know you're tweaking your formula, but my formula really does tend to love really good defenses at home, especially with a big number like this. 7.5 is just a lot of points.
It is.
And I feel like it's overreacting to what we saw on the field on Saturday. I don't think if you looked at the advanced metrics, they would have this as a 7.5 point game. I haven't done the math on the SP plus ratings, but it just feels like too many points. And I think Michigan knows that they are at a disadvantage when you compare the two offenses. They know they need to take the air out of the football. And I think that's what they're going to do to try to kind of strangle out at least a close game. The path to victory is completely taking the air out of the football, having a couple 8-9 minute drives and either converting with a field goal or punching it into the end zone. But I think the path to a cover is much more sure. I think Texas wins this game outright, but 7.5 is just too many points for me on the road.
Will Johnson pick six like he had last week would certainly help
It's
home
shit, and
bettors.
that is on the table, right? Like that's not an outlandish thing to ask for.
Yeah.
You're going up against a quarterback that has thrown some interceptions when he faces pressure.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. I tell you what, I've hit historically between 75 and 80% on outright winners since we've been doing this show. But against the spread, man, I've hit a cold streak. Whether it be the Ledger bets last season to start this year, we went 0-3 in the Ledger. So it's not been a great start for your boy. So I did have to do some soul searching over the weekend. And, if I'm not overreacting, I'm not trying. So we're going to go the other way. We're going to go Texas minus the number. And here's why. I agree with you on a lot of your points. I think Michigan is going to be able to take the air out of the football and shorten this game. So I don't think that this is going to be some sort of crazy shootout. But I do think if you're telling me that I only need to win this game by 10, which is what I think I have Texas ultimately doing anyway, I feel pretty confident in taking the Longhorns to win 24-14, something like that, right? Specifically, when I look at what Texas's linebackers have to do in this game, they have to be able to stop the run. Heck, Fresno State's linebacking crew did that a little bit this last week. Now, with Sharon Moore being very vanilla and just charge straight ahead, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, maybe. But we'll see if they can withstand a very good defensive line from Texas, albeit maybe some question marks in the interior, but an elite linebacking core. Also, when Davis Warren did throw the football and when he needed a big play, who did he look for? He looked for Colson Loveland, their tight end. If the linebackers and safeties can take Loveland out of the equation and kind of take away that safety blanket, I think the Wolverines are in a world of hurt potentially offensively. So I'll take Texas all the speed that they have to find a way to score maybe 3 touchdowns as opposed to 2. They tack on a field goal maybe late to cover this game, put it out of reach. I'll take the Longhorns 24-14. We'd love to know what you guys have this game as. No doubt this will be the most watched game on the weekend. So bring your takes at 3Tech Pod. Let us know in the comments. You can tweet at us, DM us on Instagram, wherever you'd like to reach out. We would love to have that conversation with you.
Gracious, how about that?